Previously, we tackled our van's electrical issue, and today we are ready to think about the insulation. Insulation is key to maintain temperature and reduce noise inside our van, so planning it out is crucial. We considered various insulation types, factoring where each kind should go, and calculated the quantities needed, all of which we will be sharing as we go along. First up, we are laying down floor insulation. For this, we are repurposing some high-density rubber underlay which is designed for putting down on the subfloors in houses. But it's very dense and is very good sound and heat insulator, which is ideal for the van because you want to stop road noise and stop the heat rising into the van. Also stop losing the cold in the summer times and losing the heat in the cold times.
I'm going to be cutting strips of this to fit in between all these sections here. It's exactly 10mm thick, this stuff, and these ribs are also 10mm off of the lower section, so that's quite good. It'll bring everything level to here, which will allow me to then lay a polystyrene insulation of 25mm on top of that. So that'll be a nice amount of insulation to have on the floor. I think it's more important to have most of the insulation in the ceiling, which I will talk about later. But yeah, that's the plan today, to cut these strips, glue them down onto the metal, ready for the insulation arriving. So now I've given the floor a good clean up, just swept it up and cleaned all the dust off. I'm going to start cutting strips of this rubber, resilient rubber. I'm going to be gluing it down. So. Hi, just another update on the progress. This is where I got to yesterday, so about 1/3 of the van is done now. Everything pretty simple so far. It's quite straightforward to cut. There's a couple of intricate cuts, but nothing too challenging. The only slight issue I've had is that the glue that I use, which is not really specifically designed for this purpose, I was just trying to use up a bit of glue I had left over from another job. It hasn't really set. It's become a lot more tack, and it is biting, but I think it's going to take another day or so to fully harden. But just as a precaution, in case it doesn't fully harden, I'm going to switch to a different glue, this expanding polyurethane. It's really good stuff. It expands slightly, not enough that it's going to push away the rubber from the floor of the van, but it provides a really good hold to metal. I've used it on the windows of things so far, and it was really good, to be honest with you. So yeah, I'm going to carry on with this. Hopefully we'll finish the rest of the van floor today.
The installation couldn't arrive in a better moment, to be honest. So this is the expensive one. So now it's just a matter of time when we can actually put it across all our walls and ceilings.
Right, as you can see, I've got the first section of polystyrene glued down. There were a couple of corners that weren't sitting quite flat, just because the polystyrene isn't perfectly flat, especially at 25mm. So I just applied some weight in areas just to hold it down while the glue sets. And the glue's setting really well. It sets so fast. This is polyurethane glue, and it's super strong. It is a very delicate process cutting the 25mm polystyrene, so you just have to do that very carefully. If you have a hot knife cutter, that would be even better, because it would save the mess that it creates also cutting polystyrene. But so far so good. This method of gluing down a polystyrene directly seems to be working really well, and I don't see why the engineered flooring won't also glue down to the polystyrene really well. So it saves laying battens, so it saves a bit of time, and also saves either putting screws through the floor of the van, which I think is, if you can avoid it, that's probably a good thing. And once it's all glued down and you've got the weight of some furniture and units and a couple of internal walls on it, it's just not going to be going anywhere, and overall it will have better thermal properties as well. So I've just finished gluing down the last of the 25mm polystyrene onto the floor. One thing I would say if you're going to use this method is to make sure you've got something quite heavy and really flat to just to hold down the polystyrene while the glue sets, because as I already said, it does expand a bit, and you want to make sure that it's super flat, because if it's not, it might make it difficult to lay the flooring, because the flooring will like to sit dead flat. You don't really want gaps underneath where the glue's not making contact between the wood flooring and the substrate underneath. So this is how it's looking now. As you can see, I've placed a heavy object just while the last bit of glue goes off. There was, just right at the end there, close to the doors, there was a gap where the original floor of the van just sloped off a little bit. So what I've had to do is just brace everything with the oak flooring and the table on top, and then just fill it with insulating foam, and just allow the foam to harden underneath the polystyrene. Because I've got enough weight on top of it right now, it won't lift it, and the foam just expands outwards, so that's worked out pretty well. So now that the polystyrene is down, what I'm going to do is just run a duct within the polystyrene for running cables from the front compartment of the vehicle and the back, because we're just waiting on some cables to arrive for our electrical system, and it just makes sense to have some kind of trunking within the floor that we can run those big cables in. It shortens the run, makes it easier without having to run them through all the panelling of the van, which obviously will use a lot more cable, which is not ideal. You want to keep cable runs as short as possible. So yeah, I'm going to cut some trunking into the polystyrene just along here. You can see this mark here. This is where it's going to go, and the battery is actually under the seat there, because this is a hybrid vehicle, and so it has a 48-volt battery positioned underneath the passenger seat. So I've cut this 100mm by 50mm rectangular ducting in half, well a bit over half. It was 52mm, and I thought 24mm would be perfect, just to allow for any ups and downs in the floor underneath. So what I'm going to do is chop out the polystyrene where I've drawn this line here, and this is going to be sat beneath the floor surface, which will give a nice smooth surface for pushing cables through. Probably be about 3 pieces of these joined together, which will get us directly from where the starter battery is to the house batteries at the back. Right, so we've had a chat and we decided that we're going to run another smaller piece of trunking within the polystyrene of the floor as well. This will give us a nice easy route for the cables in the future. and just in case we forget anything, it will just make it a lot easier to get cables from one side of the van to the other. So it's going to be going across here like this, and this will just be 50mm wide like this one. I ended up modifying the trunking that's buried in the floor slightly. What I thought is that I didn't really want the cables coming up through the floor. I prefer them to go straight into the wall, purely because we don't know exactly where batteries and things are going to be sitting yet, and it'd be really annoying if we're trying to sit them somewhere and the cables are coming out the floor, or sitting anything else there, to be honest with you. I think it's just much better and tidier to have the cables coming out of the wall. So this is what I've done with the trunking. You see it now has a slight kick on it, and I made a hole here. As you can see, the cables will go through here. Whenever you make a hole through the metal, it's important to treat it with some rust treatment. I've just used a red oxide primer here, and then this is a grommet strip, just to stop the sharp metal digging into the cables. Also, you'll see at the back I've run another piece of trunking from one side to the other. The idea of this trunking is so that we can just get cables from one side to the other more directly, rather than going up through the ceiling and back down again. Since then, I've also been marking out where things are going. As you can see, we've got this line running through here, which is going to be the kitchen area, so the kitchen will go from the wall through to this line. On the other side, I'll show you the shower area. So this is where the wall will finish, the bulkhead wall, and then the shower will be approximately 70 centimeters wide on this side and shrinking down to around 60 centimeters on the other side, and it's 90 centimeters in length. The toilet will sit at this end of the shower, so the wider end is going to be used for showering. Also, we're going to leave a lot of this area extra wide for shoulder space, elbow space, so we'll be using a super thin insulation here, just to, obviously, because we haven't got the full depth to add rock wool at 100mm like we will be on other panels, so we've invested in aerogel here, which I'll show you later. Other than that, we've got the walkway here between the kitchen and wardrobe space, which is coming along the left side here, and here we're going to have a step up at this point, so we'll have a raised seating area and a raised bed area, which will give us a bit more storage underneath. And this is the flooring we're going to be using. Some people might think it's a bit overkill for a van build. It's 18mm engineered oak flooring. As you can see, they're very wide, 300mm wide boards. And the reason we're using this is it was left over from a project. So more than anything, it's just to clear the space. But because it's a structural floor, we can actually use it directly onto the polystyrene, because it's strong enough. Whereas normally you might go for a subfloor of ply or something, and then a finishing floor on top of that. This is our structural and our finished floor in one. I don't think we've got quite enough to run everywhere. So what we'll do is run it in the areas it's actually going to be showing. I'll use it wherever I can, really, on top of that. But if there's any gap, if I haven't got quite enough to fill every space, I'll probably be using some 18mm OSB, which is the same depth as this, because you won't see it, just to add a bit more structure to this floor, because obviously at the moment it's just polystyrene, but once you put an 18mm board on it, it's actually really strong. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be starting to do now.